Whispers of a Romance Sleep Story, presented by Bedtime Stories. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath. And now, let the story begin. Elara's days began not with the sharp ring of an alarm, but with the gentle, rhythmic whisper of the sea. It was a sound she'd known her entire life, a lullaby that had cradled her childhood dreams and now underscored the quiet hum of her adult reality. Her cottage, small and sturdy, nestled among a cluster of others just a stone's throw from the cliffs of Seabreeze, smelled perpetually of sea salt, damp earth, and the faint, sweet promise of rising dough. She owned the Cozy Kettle, a small tea shop and bakery that was the heart of Seabreeze in more ways than one. It wasn't just the warmth of her oven or the comforting aroma of cinnamon and cardamom that drew people in. It was Elara herself. With her kind eyes, framed by wisps of chestnut hair that always seemed to escape her sensible braid, and her soft, inviting smile, she was a quiet anchor in the bustling lives of the townspeople. Her hands, dusted with flour, kneaded not just bread, but a sense of community into every loaf and scone. This morning, like most mornings, Elara was up before dawn, the sky still a deep, inky canvas pricked with stars. She moved through her cottage, a silent ballet of practiced movements, her bare feet cool against the worn wooden floors. A well-loved wool cardigan was slipped over her nightdress, a mug of steaming herbal tea clutched in her hands as she stepped out onto her tiny porch. The air was crisp, carrying the briny tang of the ocean and a hint of the approaching autumn chill. The moon, a sliver of pearl, hung low over the dark expanse of the sea, casting a silver path that shimmered and danced. She sat on the old wooden bench, sipping her tea, watching the first blush of dawn paint the horizon in soft hues of rose and lavender. This was her sacred time, a moment of stillness before the cheerful chaos of the day began. She listened to the waves sighing against the shore, a continuous, comforting murmur that felt like an old friend's presence. Sometimes, if she listened closely enough, she swore she could hear faint whispers carried on the wind, not words precisely, but a feeling, an ancient echo from the sea itself, hinting at stories untold, at possibilities just beyond the horizon. It was a whimsical thought, one she usually kept to herself, but it filled her with a sense of quiet wonder. When the sky was a clear, brilliant blue, and the gulls began their plaintive cries, Elara finally stirred. She made her way to the shop, a pleasant 10-minute walk through the winding, cobbled streets of Seabreeze. The town was beginning to wake up, lights flickering on in windows, the distant sound of fishing boats chugging out of the harbor. The Cozy Kettle, with its cheerful blue door and window boxes overflowing with late-blooming petunias, welcomed her with its familiar scent of yeast and sugar. Inside, the bakery was still cool and quiet, awaiting her touch. She tied on her apron, her hands moving with practiced grace as she measured flour, cracked eggs, and set the yeast to proof. The rhythmic thud of dough being kneaded, the gentle clatter of baking trays, the comforting warmth radiating from the oven, these were the symphony of her mornings. By the time the first customer, old Mr. Henderson, arrived promptly at 7 for his daily rye bread and a strong black coffee, the shop was filled with the intoxicating aroma of freshly baked croissants and the sweet, buttery scent of melting chocolate. The morning unfolded in a flurry of activity, a steady stream of familiar faces and friendly chatter. Mrs. Gable, with her perfectly coiffed silver hair, always chose a lemon poppy seed scone and a pot of Earl Grey. Young Liam, the fisherman's son, invariably asked for a sticky cinnamon bun, his face bright with anticipation. Elara greeted each one with a genuine smile, remembering their usual orders, offering a word of comfort or a shared laugh. She loved her customers, loved the quiet rhythm of her life. Yet sometimes, as she wiped down the counter or rearranged a display of dainty teacups, a small unbidden thought would surface, a gentle whisper, perhaps, of a longing for something more, something new, something unexpected to stir the calm waters of her days. It was mid-morning when the bell above the door chimed, announcing a new arrival. Elara was bent over the counter, meticulously arranging a tray of berry tarts, her concentration absolute. She didn't immediately look up, merely offered a soft welcome to the Cozy Kettle. "Be with you in a moment." A moment stretched. The usual cheerful hum of the shop seemed to quiet slightly, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. When she finally straightened, wiping her flour-dusted hands on her apron, She found herself looking into the most remarkable pair of eyes she had ever seen. They belonged to a man standing just inside the doorway, a canvas bag slung over one shoulder, a well-worn leather-bound notebook clutched in one hand. He was tall, with a lean, almost artistic frame and a comfortable mess of dark brown hair that fell across his forehead. But it was his eyes that truly captured her, a striking shade of sea gray like the ocean on a cloudy day, deep and thoughtful, with a touch of something unreadable, perhaps a quiet melancholy, perhaps just intense observation. He wasn't particularly handsome in a conventional polished way, but there was an honesty to his face, a rugged charm that was utterly captivating. A faint stubble shadowed his jaw, and the lines around his eyes suggested a man who smiled often, even if not at this very moment. He seemed to be taking in the entire shop, his gaze sweeping over the warm wooden tables, the shelves laden with teas and preserves, the sunlight streaming through the window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. When his eyes finally met hers, a faint, almost shy smile touched his lips, softening the intensity of his gaze. "Sorry," he said, his voice a low, pleasant rumble. "Just admiring your sanctuary. It smells incredible." Ilara felt a blush creep up her neck. She was used to compliments on her baking, but his words felt different, more personal, as if he were appreciating the essence of her space, not just its products. "Thank you," she managed, her voice a little softer than usual. "Can I help you?" He stepped further into the shop, his presence somehow filling the space without dominating it. "I hope so. I'm new to Seabreeze. Just arrived last night. I'm looking for a good cup of tea, and maybe something to take the edge off a long drive." He gestured vaguely with his notebook. "And a quiet corner, if you have one." "We have plenty of tea," Ilara said, a small smile playing on her lips. "And quiet corners, too. What kind of tea are you in the mood for?" He hesitated, his gaze briefly flicking to the extensive wall of tea tins behind her. "Something comforting and strong." "A good Assam, then," she suggested, already reaching for the familiar black tin. "And for something to eat?" "Whatever you recommend," he said, his eyes twinkling slightly. "I trust your judgment implicitly, given the aroma." Ilara found herself chuckling. "Well, in that case, I'd suggest a classic. A butterscone, fresh out of the oven, with our homemade strawberry jam." "Sounds perfect," he said, that shy smile returning. "And thank you." As she moved to prepare his order, she could feel his eyes on her, not in an intrusive way, but with a gentle curiosity. She poured hot water over the tea leaves, the rich, malty scent rising to meet her. When she turned to place the tray with a steaming pot of Assam, a delicate teacup, and a perfectly golden scone on the counter, he reached into his bag. "My name's Reese," he offered, extending a hand. His grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. "Ilara," she replied, her own hand meeting his. "Welcome to Seabreeze, Reese." "Thank you, Ilara. It's peaceful here, exactly what I was looking for." He paid for his order and chose a small table by the window, tucked away in a corner, overlooking the cobbled street. He took a sip of his tea, his eyes closing for a moment in quiet appreciation. Then he broke off a piece of the scone, spread a generous dollop of jam, and took a bite. A look of pure contentment spread across his face, and Ilara felt a surprising warmth bloom in her chest. It was always gratifying to see someone enjoy her baking, but with Reese, it felt different, somehow more significant. He didn't immediately open his notebook, but simply sat, sipping his tea, looking out the window, occasionally glancing around the shop. "Daddy, he seemed to be absorbing the atmosphere, the quiet rhythm of the place. Ilara found herself stealing glances at him between serving other customers. There was an air of quiet thoughtfulness about him, a sense of being deeply present, yet also slightly distant, as if his mind was always working on something profound. Later, when the lunch rush was winding down, and the shop was momentarily empty, Ilara decided to brave a small conversation. She approached his table, carrying a fresh pot of hot water. "Another pour?" she asked, indicating his nearly empty teapot. "Please," he said, looking up, his gaze soft. "This tea is truly wonderful." As she refilled his pot, she asked, "So, what brings you to Seabreeze, Riss? Just passing through, or are you staying a while?" He leaned back in his chair, a slight smile playing on his lips. "Staying a while, I hope. I'm a writer, Or at least I'm trying to be. I've been looking for a quiet place, away from the city, somewhere with a bit of character, a bit of inspiration. He gestured vaguely towards the window, then back towards the tea shop itself. Sea breeze seems to fit the bill perfectly. And this place, he added, his eyes sweeping around the cozy kettle, is already proving to be a muse. A muse? Elara chuckled softly. I'm not sure a tea shop qualifies, but I'm glad you think so. Oh, it absolutely does, he insisted, his voice gentle but firm. The warmth, the smells, the quiet hum of conversation, the way the light falls through the window in the afternoon, it all has a story waiting to be told. And your baking, he added, picking up the last crumb of his scone, is certainly inspiring. The perfect fuel for thought. Elara felt her cheeks warm again. Well, I hope Seabreeze provides you with all the inspiration you need. Do you write fiction or something else? He hesitated for a moment, his gaze drifting to his notebook. Fiction, mostly. Stories. Sometimes I just observe. I try to capture the small, beautiful moments that often go unnoticed. That sounds lovely, Elara said, genuinely intrigued. She imagined him sitting here, day after day, quietly observing the lives unfolding around him, weaving them into narratives. It was a romantic notion, a bit like the whispers she heard from the sea. Are you from Seabreeze, Elara? He asked, turning the conversation back to her. Born in and raised, she confirmed. My family has been here for generations. This shop belonged to my grandmother, then my mother, and now, me. She gestured around the cozy space. It's in my blood, I suppose. The smell of flour and yeast, the sound of the waves. That's wonderful, he said, a genuine warmth in his voice. To have such roots, to carry on a tradition. He paused, then added, it must be a comfort, knowing your place in the world so clearly. There was a subtle wistfulness in his tone that didn't escape Elara. It made her wonder about his own past, his own roots. It is, she admitted. But sometimes it makes you wonder what else is out there. What other stories are waiting? Reese met her gaze, and for a fleeting moment, she felt a profound connection, as if he understood that quiet yearning, that faint whisper for something more. Perhaps, he said softly, the stories are waiting right here, Elara. We just have to know how to listen. The bell above the door chimed again, breaking the spell. Young Liam, back from school, bounded in, eager for another cinnamon bun. Elara offered Reese a small smile. Well, I'd better get back to it. Welcome again, Rhys. I hope you find your inspiration. I think I already have, he murmured, his gaze lingering on her for a moment, before he turned back to his notebook, a thoughtful expression on his face. Over the next few days, Reese became a quiet fixture in the cozy kettle. He arrived late mornings, always choosing the same corner table by the window. He ordered the same Assam tea, sometimes a scone, sometimes a slice of apple cake, always with a polite smile and a quiet word of thanks. He spent hours there, writing diligently in his notebook, or sometimes just staring out the window, his expression pensive. Elara found herself looking forward to his arrival. His presence, though silent, was a comforting one. She learned to anticipate his order, to have his tea brewing just as he walked in. She noticed the way his brow furrowed in concentration when he was deep in thought, the faint amusement that would touch his lips when he overheard a particularly lively bit of local gossip. She noticed the way he held his pen, the elegant curve of his handwriting when she glimpsed his notebook. Their conversations were brief, yet always held a gentle depth. They spoke of the changing weather, the beauty of the Seabreeze coastline, the quiet charm of the town. He asked about her baking, genuinely interested in the craft, and she found herself explaining the subtle nuances of different flours, the magic of yeast, the delicate balance of flavors. He, in turn, shared snippets of his observations, a particularly vivid description of the morning light on the harbor, the peculiar habits of the resident seagulls, a whimsical thought about the old lighthouse keeper. One afternoon, as a particularly heavy rain shower lashed against the windows, driving everyone indoors, Reese looked up from his notebook. You know, Elara, he began, his voice cutting through the gentle murmur of the rain. I've been thinking about what you said, about hearing whispers from the sea. Elara, who was polishing the espresso machine, paused, surprised. She hadn't expected him to remember that small, whimsical admission. Oh? Yes, he continued, a thoughtful expression on his face. I think I understand what you mean. It's not just the sound of the waves, is it? It's, a feeling, a sense of stories, of histories, of emotions carried on the wind and the water. Like the sea is trying to tell us something, if we only listen closely enough. She walked over to his table, a small smile playing on her lips. Exactly. It's not just a sound, it's a presence. It's why I came here, I think, he confessed, lowering his voice slightly. To find those whispers. To find a way to translate them into something tangible. My last project. It felt hollow, disconnected. I needed to reconnect with something real, something ancient. He ran a hand through his dark hair, a rare glimpse of vulnerability in his usually composed demeanor. The city, it numbs you. It drowns out the quiet voices. The sea certainly has a way of making you listen, Alara agreed, her gaze drawn to the tumultuous gray expanse beyond the window. She felt a surge of empathy for him, for this quiet man seeking solace and inspiration in the rhythms of nature. What was your last project about? He hesitated, then offered a small, self-deprecating shrug. A rather cynical urban drama. It didn't feel authentic. Not to me, anyway. He looked at her, his sea-gray eyes earnest. I want to write something with heart, something that resonates, something that reminds people of the beauty in the everyday, the magic in the mundane. Alara's heart fluttered. His words echoed her own quiet philosophy, her own belief in the beauty of a perfectly baked scone, the comfort of a warm cup of tea, the connection forged over shared moments. I think you've come to the right place for that, Race, she said softly. Sea breeze is full of heart and quiet magic. He smiled, a genuine, open smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, more approachable. I'm starting to believe that, Alara, especially in places like this. He gestured around the cozy shop, then to her. The rain continued to fall, a soothing curtain against the window panes. Outside, the world was gray and indistinct, but inside the cozy kettle, a new warmth was beginning to bloom, a quiet understanding unfurling between them. It felt as natural as the turning of the tides, as comforting as the scent of baking bread. The whispers of the sea outside seemed to find an echo in the subtle, unspoken connection growing between Alara and Reese, hinting at a story just beginning to take shape. He picked up his mug, the steam curling around his fingers, and took a slow sip, his eyes still holding hers. You know, Alara, I've been to my fair share of coffee shops, but there's a quiet magic about this place. It's more than just the coffee, exquisite as it is. It's the atmosphere. And your pastries, of course. He offered a soft smile, one that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners, making him seem a little less guarded, a little more approachable. Alara felt a blush creep up her neck, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the lingering heat from the oven. Thank you, Reese. That means a lot. The cozy kettle is my dream, really. Every crumb, every cup, every book on the shelf. It's all been carefully chosen. She gestured around the small, inviting space, her gaze lingering on the worn spines of the books, the soft glow of the lamps, the comfortable armchairs that seemed to invite lingering. I wanted it to feel like a second home for anyone who steps inside. You've certainly succeeded, he murmured, his gaze sweeping the room before returning to her. It feels lived in, loved, not like some of the sterile, hurried places you find in bigger cities. A flicker of something, perhaps a memory, crossed his face, a momentary shadow. Are you from a bigger city, Riss? She asked gently, sensing the shift. He paused, considering. I've spent time in them, yes, but I've also spent a lot of time elsewhere, moving around. I came to Gull's Cove looking for a change of pace, a quieter rhythm. He didn't elaborate, but the way he spoke hinted at a past that was perhaps more complicated than the calm exterior suggested. Alara didn't press. She understood the desire for a quieter rhythm. Gull's Cove had always been her anchor, a place where the steady pulse of the ocean dictated the day, where community was woven into the very fabric of life. It's certainly quiet here, she agreed, a small smile playing on her lips. Sometimes a little too quiet, perhaps, but mostly it's a blessing. Especially on days like this. She gestured towards the rain-streaked window. Their conversation flowed easily after that, meandering from the merits of dark roast versus light, to the best local spots for foraging wild berries, to the peculiar habits of the seagulls that frequented the harbor. Reese had a quiet wit, a thoughtful way of listening that made her feel heard, truly heard, in a way she hadn't experienced in a long time. He spoke of his travels, of remote coastlines and ancient forests, painting pictures with his words that made Alara's imagination stir. He had a profound appreciation for nature, a deep respect for the wild, untamed places of the world. As the afternoon light began to wane, casting longer shadows across the cafe floor, the rain finally softened to a drizzle. The bell above the door chimed, admitting Mrs. Gable, a spry woman with a twinkle in her eye, who came in for her usual Earl Grey and a friendly gossip session. Reese, sensing the shift, stood up. "Thank you, Alara, for the coffee, the pastry, and the conversation," he said, his voice a low, warm rumble. He left a generous sum on the counter, more than enough for his order. "You're welcome, Reese," she replied, her heart giving a little flutter at his words. "Come again." He nodded, a lingering look in his eyes that promised he would. "I will." And he did. The next morning, as the first rays of sun pierced through the lingering clouds, painting the harbor in shades of rose and gold, Reese was there. He sat in the same armchair by the window, a book in hand, and ordered the same coffee, a different pastry, a cinnamon swirl this time. Alara found herself anticipating his arrival, her gaze drifting towards the door even as she whisked batter for scones or arranged fresh flowers on the tables. He became a quiet fixture in the cozy kettle, a comforting presence. He never overstayed, never demanded attention, yet his presence filled the small space in a way that felt perfectly natural. Sometimes, he'd offer a quiet observation about the changing tide or a particularly beautiful sunrise. Other times he'd simply read, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally looking up to catch her eye and offer a small, warm smile. Alara learned more about him in these quiet moments than through direct questioning. She observed the way he handled his books, with reverence, turning pages carefully. The way he always left his table impeccably tidy. The way his eyes, when he wasn't reading, would often drift out to sea, a distant, contemplative look in them. He was a man who carried a certain stillness within him, like a deep pool reflecting the sky. One blustery Tuesday, a sudden gust of wind tore through Gull's Cove, rattling the old windows of the cozy kettle, and sending a stack of flyers for the upcoming village fete skittering across the pavement outside. Alara, flustered, rushed to gather them, battling the wind that whipped her hair into her eyes. Before she could even reach the door, Reese was there, stepping out quickly, his long strides covering the distance in moments. He moved with a quiet efficiency, his hands strong and quick as he scooped up the scattered papers, his body shielding her from the wind's assault. "Here, let me," he said, his voice calm amidst the bluster. He gathered the last of them, his fingers brushing hers as he handed them back. The brief contact sent a jolt through her, a warmth that lingered even after he'd retreated back inside. "Thank you, Reese," she said, catching her breath, a genuine smile blooming on her face. "You're a lifesaver." He just gave a small, self-deprecating shrug. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But his eyes held a softer look, a quiet satisfaction. That evening, as the last customer left and Alara began her nightly routine of cleaning, she found a small, carefully folded note tucked beneath her tip jar. It was written in a clean, elegant script. "Alara, I noticed your old sign for the cafe is a bit weathered. If you ever need a hand with anything, I'm quite handy with a paintbrush. Reese." Her heart gave another little leap. He noticed. He remembered. He offered. "D." It wasn't just a casual offer. It was thoughtful, observant, and deeply kind. The next morning, emboldened by his note, Alara brought it up as he sat sipping his coffee. "Reese?" she began, a little shyly. "About your offer for the sign? It would actually be wonderful. It's been bothering me for ages, but I never seem to find the time." His face lit up with a genuine smile. "I'd be happy to. I enjoy working with my hands. When would be a good time?" They settled on the following Saturday, a day when the cafe closed a little earlier. The week leading up to it buzzed with a quiet anticipation for Alara. She found herself imagining him up on a ladder, paintbrush in hand, and a warmth would spread through her chest. Saturday dawned bright and clear, a crisp autumn day with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of salt and pine. Alara closed the cafe early, a rare luxury, and found Reese already waiting outside, dressed in sturdy jeans and a worn but clean work shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He had a small toolkit with him and a confident, capable air. "Good morning, Alara," he greeted, his voice warm. "Ready to tackle that sign?" "More than ready," she laughed, feeling a lightness she hadn't realized she was missing. They worked together in comfortable silence for a while. Reese carefully took down the old faded wooden sign that hung above the cafe door, inspecting it with a practiced eye. "It's good wood," he mused, running a hand over the weathered surface. "Just needs a little sanding, a fresh coat of paint, and it'll be good as new. Better, even." Alara brought out a bucket of warm soapy water and a sponge, and together they cleaned off years of salt spray and dust. Their hands occasionally brushed, sending tiny sparks of awareness through her. She watched him work, admiring the focus and precision in his movements. He didn't rush, taking his time to ensure every stroke was even, every detail attended to. As the sun climbed higher, warming their backs, they began to talk again, their conversation punctuated by the rhythmic scrape of sandpaper against wood. Reese told her about growing up near the sea, learning to sail from an early age, and his fascination with old boats. Alara shared stories of her grandmother, who had first instilled in her a love for baking and books, and who had dreamed of a place like the Cozy Kettle. "She would have loved this," Alara said softly, looking at the cafe with new eyes, seeing it through the lens of shared dreams. "She always said food was love, and stories were the glue that held everything together." Reese paused his sanding, his gaze softening as he looked at her. "She sounds like a wonderful woman." And she was right. This place, it radiates both. They took a break for lunch, Alara bringing out 2 steaming mugs of her rich vegetable soup and thick slices of her homemade focaccia. They sat on the small bench outside the cafe, watching the occasional passerby, the rhythmic bobbing of fishing boats in the harbor, and the endless dance of the waves against the shore. It felt less like a task and more like a shared adventure, a quiet domestic tableau. "This is delicious, Alara," Reese said, savoring the soup. "You really do have a gift." "It's just a simple recipe," she demurred, though his praise warmed her. "Simple, perhaps, but made with care. That's the difference." He looked out at the sea, a thoughtful expression on his face. "You know, when I first arrived in Gull's Cove, I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Just a place to stop for a while. But this place, it has a way of drawing you in. The people, the peace, and this cafe." He turned back to her, his eyes holding hers, serious and sincere. "It feels like home, Alara." The words hung in the air between them, a fragile, beautiful thing. "Find home." It was a powerful word, especially coming from a man who seemed to have spent his life drifting. Alara felt a blush rise to her cheeks, her heart fluttering like a captive bird. It was more than just a compliment about her cafe. It felt like a deeper confession, a quiet anchoring. They spent the rest of the afternoon painting. Reese carefully applied a fresh coat of deep sea blue paint to the background of the sign, while Alara meticulously traced the golden letters of the Cozy Kettle with a fine brush. Their heads were close together, their hands steady, a comfortable silence settling between them once more, occasionally broken by a soft hum from Reese or a contented sigh from Alara. As dusk began to settle, casting long purple shadows, the sign was finished. It looked magnificent, the colors vibrant and welcoming, a beacon against the old stone of the building. Reese rehung it with care, stepping back to admire their handiwork. "Perfect," he said, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "Absolutely perfect." Alara stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the gleaming sign, a deep sense of pride and a surprising swell of emotion filling her. "It is," she agreed softly, turning to him, her eyes shining. "Thank you, Reese. Truly, it means so much." He met her gaze, and in the deepening twilight, his eyes seemed to hold a deeper warmth, a quiet tenderness. "My pleasure, Alara, truly." He hesitated for a moment, then reached out, his thumb gently brushing a speck of paint from her cheek. The touch was light, fleeting, yet it sent a shiver down her spine, a silent acknowledgement of the growing intimacy between them. "I should get home," he said, his voice a little rougher than before. "It's getting late." "Of course," Alara replied, her voice barely a whisper, still feeling the lingering warmth of his touch. "I'll see you tomorrow?" He smiled, a gentle, knowing smile. You will, bright and early. After he left, Alara lingered outside, admiring the sign, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of the sea. She felt a profound sense of contentment, a quiet joy bubbling up inside her. Reese was unlike anyone she had ever met. He was thoughtful, capable, observant, and he saw her, not just the cafe owner, but Alara herself, with her dreams and her quiet passions. The next few days settled into a comfortable rhythm. Reese continued his morning visits, sometimes staying a little longer, sometimes helping Alara carry in a delivery of flour or move a particularly heavy stack of books. He even suggested a new shelving unit for the children's corner, sketching out a design that was both practical and charming. Alara found herself increasingly relying on his quiet strength, his steady presence. The villagers, ever observant, began to notice. Old Mr. Henderson, who ran the local hardware store, gave Alara a knowing wink when she came in to buy some new varnish. Mrs. Gable, over her afternoon tea, remarked, "That young man, Reese, seems a lovely sort, Alara. Very polite. And quite handy, I hear." There was a gentle, unspoken approval in their observations, a tacit blessing that made Alara's cheeks flush with a mixture of embarrassment and pleasure. One crisp afternoon, with the sun low in the sky, casting long shadows across the cobbled streets, Alara found herself closing the cafe earlier than usual. A small leak had sprung in the old piping beneath the sink, a minor but persistent drip that she couldn't ignore. She tried to fix it herself, but her limited plumbing skills had only made it worse. As she knelt, wrestling with a wrench, feeling utterly frustrated, the bell above the door chimed. It was Reese, looking surprised to find the cafe empty and Alara looking disheveled. "Everything all right, Alara?" he asked, his brow furrowed with concern. She sighed, a frustrated sound. "Not really. The sink pipe has sprung a leak, and I seem to be making it worse, not better." She gestured helplessly at the dripping water. Reese knelt beside her without a moment's hesitation, assessing the situation with a keen eye. "Ah, yes. A common problem with older plumbing. Mind if I take a look?" "Please," she practically begged, stepping back. "I'd be eternally grateful." He worked quickly and efficiently, his large hands surprisingly deft with the tools. He explained what he was doing as he went, pointing out the worn washer, the loose connection. Alara watched, fascinated, as he calmly and methodically dismantled, cleaned, and reassembled the pipes. Within half an hour, the drip was gone, the pipes secure. "There," he said, wiping his hands on a rag she'd handed him. "Good as new." Alara felt a rush of relief and a renewed sense of admiration. "Reese, I don't know what to say. You're truly indispensable." He chuckled, a low, warm sound. "Just happy to help. It's always good to have a few practical skills up your sleeve." He looked at her, his eyes warm. "You look tired, though. Long day?" "A bit," she admitted, rubbing her temples. "It feels like everything is always breaking down when I least expect it." "Perhaps you need a break," he suggested softly. "A change of scenery." He hesitated, then took a breath. "There's a beautiful stretch of beach just north of here, a little cove that's always deserted this time of year. The sunset there is incredible. Would you consider joining me for a walk there once you're done here, just to clear your head?" Alara's heart fluttered. This wasn't just a friendly offer of help. This was an invitation. A proper, intentional invitation. Her initial instinct was to decline, to say she had too much to do. But something in his hopeful gaze, the genuine concern in his eyes, made her pause. She didn't feel tired. And the thought of watching a sunset with Reese, away from the familiar confines of the cafe, felt incredibly appealing. "I'd like that very much, Reese," she said, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "Give me half an hour to finish up here, and I'll meet you at the old lighthouse." His smile widened, a quiet joy lighting his features. "Perfect. I'll be waiting." As he left, Alara felt a surge of excitement, a lightness in her step as she tidied up the cafe. She quickly changed into warmer clothes, pulling on a thick wool sweater and sturdy boots. She even paused to check her reflection, smoothing her hair, a nervous flutter in her stomach. It felt like a first date, though neither of them had called it that. It felt like something new, something promising, unfolding beneath the watchful eye of Gull's Cove. She locked the cafe door behind her, the new sign gleaming in the fading light, a testament to their shared efforts. The air was crisp and invigorating, carrying the scent of salt and damp earth. As she walked towards the lighthouse, its beam already sweeping across the darkening sky, she felt a profound sense of anticipation. The whispers of the sea, once just a backdrop, now seemed to hum with a new melody, a gentle song of beginnings. And Alara, for the first time in a long time, felt ready to listen. The path to the lighthouse was a familiar one, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, yet tonight it felt entirely new. Each crunch of gravel under her boots was a beat in a quiet rhythm, a counterpoint to the distant roar of the waves. The air, crisp and tasting of salt, invigorated her, clearing the last vestiges of doubt from her mind. For so long her heart had been a quiet room, dusty and closed off. Now it felt as though someone had thrown open the windows, letting in the fresh sea breeze and the golden light of dusk. She thought of Liam. His steady presence, his quiet strength, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. He was like the lighthouse itself, a constant guiding light in the shifting landscape of her life. Their journey with the cafe had been more than just a business venture. It had been a shared excavation, unearthing not only the beauty of the old building but also parts of themselves they hadn't known were there. He had seen her at her most frustrated, her most vulnerable, and had met her with patience and unwavering support. And she in turn had found a fierce protectiveness for him, a desire to see him succeed and thrive, a longing for his happiness that mirrored her own. As she rounded the final bend, the lighthouse loomed, a stark, beautiful sentinel against the darkening sky. Its beams swept across the water, a silent promise of safe passage. And there, silhouetted against the vast expanse of the ocean, stood Liam. He was leaning against the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his shoulders broad and reassuring. A knot of warmth unfurled in Alara's chest, a feeling so potent it almost brought tears to her eyes. He hadn't said he would be here, but somehow, she had known. He turned as he heard her approach, a soft smile gracing his lips, his eyes, even the dimming light, alight with a familiar warmth. "Alara," he said, his voice a low murmur carried on the wind. "I thought you might come." She stopped beside him, her heart thrumming a little faster. "I needed to clear my head," she confessed, though the truth was, she had needed to see him. "It feels surreal. The cafe, the sign, everything." Liam chuckled softly. "It is real, though. We made it real." He gestured towards the sea, then back towards the distant twinkle of the town lights. "A new beginning, eh?" Alara nodded, wrapping her arms around herself, not from cold, but from a sudden rush of emotion. "More than I ever dared to hope for." She risked a glance at him, his profile strong and clear against the twilight. "Thank you, Liam, for everything, for believing in me, for making this possible." He turned fully to face her, his hands coming to rest gently on her shoulders, his touch sending a shiver of warmth through her. "Alara, you made this possible. I just held the ladder." His thumb brushed lightly over the fabric of her coat, a small, tender gesture that spoke volumes. "You have a vision, a passion. It was a privilege to help you bring it to life." His gaze deepened, searching hers in the fading light. "And I wouldn't have missed it for the world." The air between them crackled with unspoken feelings, a silent symphony of shared dreams and burgeoning affection. The lighthouse beams swept over them, momentarily bathing them in its golden glow, a spotlight on a moment that felt both significant and fragile. Alara felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years, a sense of being truly seen, truly understood. "It's going to be good, isn't it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the wind. "It's going to be wonderful," Liam affirmed, his voice resonating with quiet conviction. He squeezed her shoulders gently before letting his hands fall away, though the warmth of his touch lingered. "Come on, let's head back. We have a big day tomorrow." As they walked back down the path, side by side, the silence between them was comfortable, filled with the promise of what was to come. The grand opening of the Salty Spoon was everything they had hoped for, and more. From the moment the doors swung open, a steady stream of curious locals and passing tourists filled the cozy space. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of Alara's homemade pastries, flaky apple turnovers, rich chocolate brownies, and delicate lemon tarts. Liam, a natural host, moved effortlessly between the tables, taking orders, refilling mugs, and sharing stories about the cafe's journey with a genuine warmth that immediately put everyone at ease. Alara, initially a whirlwind of nervous energy in the kitchen, found herself drawn out into the main space by Liam's infectious enthusiasm. She watched him interact with the customers, his easy laughter and genuine interest creating an atmosphere that was both welcoming and vibrant. He introduced her to regulars he knew from his fishing days, proudly declaring, "This is Alara, the genius behind these incredible treats." Her cheeks would flush with a mix of embarrassment and pride, but the joy in his eyes was contagious, melting away her usual reserve. The first week was a beautiful blur of early mornings and late nights, of shared triumphs and minor mishaps. A dropped tray of muffins, quickly salvaged with a laugh and a fresh batch. A coffee machine glitch, expertly fixed by Liam with a surprising knack for mechanics. Each challenge, however small, became an opportunity for them to work together, their unspoken communication growing more fluid with every passing day. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, a glance across the bustling cafe, enough to convey a request for more milk, a fresh pot of coffee, or a moment of shared weary satisfaction. One particularly busy afternoon, a busload of tourists descended upon the cafe, overwhelming their small staff of two. Ilara felt a surge of panic, her efficiency threatening to unravel. But Liam, sensing her rising anxiety, simply met her gaze across the counter, a calm, reassuring smile on his face. "Deep breaths, Ilara," he murmured, before turning to the line with an even wider grin. "Folks, bear with us. We're doing our best to get you caffeinated and sugared up. Ilara's pastries are worth the wait, I promise." His easy charm diffused the tension, and soon the tourists were chatting happily amongst themselves, admiring the cafe's quaint decor. Later that evening, as they finally locked the doors, the silence of the empty cafe felt profound. They stood amidst the scattered crumbs and half-empty sugar bowls, too tired to move, but too content to care. Ilara leaned against the counter, rubbing her aching feet. "I thought we were going to drown," she confessed, a tired laugh escaping her. Liam came over, taking the rag from her hand and wiping down the counter beside her. "We were a well-oiled machine, Ilara. You were incredible." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Truly, your baking is a sensation. Everyone loves it." His praise warmed her from the inside out, chasing away the exhaustion. "And you, Liam, you're a natural. The way you handle people, it's admirable." He shrugged, a faint blush rising on his neck. "Just being myself." He finished wiping the counter, then leaned back, crossing his arms, his gaze soft as he looked at her. "We make a good team, don't we?" "The best," she agreed, a comfortable silence settling between them. The scent of coffee and cinnamon still lingered in the air, a comforting perfume of their shared success. As the weeks turned into a month, the salty spoon became a beloved fixture in Port Blossom. The morning rush was a symphony of clinking mugs and cheerful greetings. Afternoons brought a quieter hum of activity, perfect for lingering over a book or a friendly chat. Evenings, though they closed relatively early, often saw them staying a little longer, tidying up, planning menus, or simply enjoying the peaceful end to a busy day. It was during these quiet evenings that their connection deepened further. They would sit at one of the small round tables, the soft glow of the hanging lanterns illuminating their faces. Liam would tell her stories of the sea, of his grandfather's fishing boat, of the small adventures and misfortunes that came with a life tied to the ocean. Ilara, in turn, would share anecdotes from her culinary school days, her passion for different ingredients, and the comfort she found in the precise alchemy of baking. One stormy night, after a particularly blustery day that had kept most customers indoors, they found themselves alone in the cafe, the wind howling softly outside. Ilara was experimenting with a new recipe for a spiced pear tart, the kitchen filled with the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg. Liam, instead of going home, had stayed, ostensibly to help clean, but mostly just to be near her. He sat at the counter, nursing a mug of tea, watching her work with an almost mesmerized gaze. "You're like a magician," he said suddenly, making her jump slightly. "Turning flour and butter into something so comforting." She smiled, pleased by his observation. "It's just science mostly, and a little bit of love." She looked at him, her heart doing a familiar flutter. "Want to be my first taste tester?" He grinned, pushing the mug aside. "My favorite role." She brought over a small slice of the warm tart, the steam curling invitingly. He took a bite, his eyes closing in pure enjoyment. "Ilara," he breathed. "This is incredible. It tastes like autumn, like a warm hug." His simple, heartfelt words meant more to her than any formal critique. She found herself leaning closer, captivated by the genuine delight on his face. "I'm glad you like it." He opened his eyes, their gazes locking across the counter. The storm outside seemed to fade into the background, the only sound the gentle crackle of the cafe's old radiator. "I like everything you make," he said, his voice softer, more intimate. "And I like everything about this." He gestured vaguely around the cafe, then back to her, encompassing their shared space, their shared life. Alara's breath caught in her throat. The everything hung in the air, weighted with unspoken meaning. It wasn't just about the cafe, she knew. It was about Wythmame. The comfortable silence stretched, filled with the warmth of unspoken affection. She felt a profound sense of belonging, a feeling she had chased for years, finally finding its anchor here, in this small, cozy cafe, with this kind, steady man. "Me too," she finally managed, her voice a little shaky. "Me too, Liam." He reached out, his fingers brushing against hers on the counter, a spark of connection igniting between them. It was a fleeting touch, yet it spoke volumes, confirming the gentle, irresistible pull that had been growing between them since the moment they first met. The cafe wasn't just a business. It was a home, not just for the community, but for their burgeoning hearts. Each day brought new stories, new challenges, and new moments of quiet joy. They learned to navigate the unpredictable rhythm of small-town life, to adapt to unexpected demands, and to celebrate the smallest victories. They found a rhythm together, a dance of shared responsibilities and mutual support that flowed effortlessly. One sunny afternoon, after the lunch rush had dwindled, Liam found Alara lost in thought, staring out the window at the bustling street. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, leaning against the counter beside her. She turned, a thoughtful smile on her face. "I was just thinking about how different my life is now. A few months ago, I was still drifting, unsure of where I belonged. And now..." She gestured around the cafe, her gaze sweeping over the warm wood, the bustling kitchen, the happy customers. "Now I feel so rooted, so home." Her eyes met his, bright and sincere. "And a lot of that is because of you, Liam." He shifted, a hint of shyness in his eyes, but his smile was genuine. "You built this, Alara. You found your home." He paused, then added softly, "I just found mine here with you." The words hung in the air, a tender declaration that settled deep within Alara's soul. Her heart swelled with a feeling so rich and full, it felt like sunshine after a long winter. The melody the sea had been humming, she realized, wasn't just a song of beginnings. It was a melody of love, a gentle, unwavering tune that had found its way into the deepest corners of her heart. And for the first time in a long time, Alara wasn't just ready to listen. She was ready to sing along. The cafe was thriving, their partnership was strong, and the future, bathed in the warm glow of possibility, stretched out before them, inviting them to dream even bigger. The dreaming started subtly, woven into the fabric of their daily routine. It was in the shared glance across a bustling counter, when a particularly difficult customer was placated, a silent acknowledgement of their teamwork. It was in the quiet hum of the espresso machine, as they cleaned up after closing, the only sounds the lapping waves outside, and the occasional clink of cutlery. They'd often linger, ostensibly tidying, but truly just enjoying the comfortable silence, punctuated by a shared memory of the day or a gentle query about the morrow. Alara found herself anticipating these moments. Finn, with his easy smile and the comforting depth in his eyes, had become an anchor in her world. He listened, truly listened, to her ideas for new pastries, her concerns about supply, even her musings on the changing patterns of the tide. And she, in turn, found herself drawn to his stories of growing up by the sea, his dreams of making the cafe a true community hub, and the surprising vulnerability in his voice when he spoke of his late grandmother, who had taught him to bake. Their conversations often drifted from business to the deeply personal, a natural, unforced progression that felt as inevitable as the turning of the tides. One crisp autumn evening, after a particularly busy day, they sat on the small, worn bench outside the cafe, mugs of steaming chamomile tea warming their hands. The air smelled of salt and distant wood smoke, and the stars were beginning to prick the darkening canvas of the sky. "That lemon poppy seed loaf you made today," Finn began, his voice soft. It was incredible. People couldn't get enough of it. Ilara smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. It's an old family recipe. My grandmother used to make it for special occasions. She sounds wonderful, Finn said, turning to face her, his knee brushing hers lightly. The contact sent a tiny, pleasant shiver through Ilara. She was, Ilara confirmed, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the last vestiges of sunset painted the sky in hues of rose and violet. She taught me everything I know about baking, and about finding beauty in the small things. There was a pause, comfortable and companionable. Then, Ilara added, almost to herself, she also taught me that heartbreak is a part of life, but it doesn't have to be the whole story. Finn didn't press for details, a quiet understanding in his gaze. Instead, he simply reached out and gently squeezed her hand where it rested on the bench between them. She sounds like a very wise woman, Ilara, and I think she'd be incredibly proud of you. His words, delivered with such sincerity, resonated deep within her. It was a comfort she hadn't realized she was craving, a gentle balm to old wounds. The melody of the sea seemed to swell, no longer just a hum, but a full, rich chord. Their professional relationship continued to blossom into something more intimate. They knew each other's unspoken cues, the slight frown that meant a batch of croissants wasn't quite right, the particular hum Finn made when he was perfecting a new coffee blend. They celebrated small victories, a glowing review in the local paper, a new regular who swore by Ilara's scones, the cafe finally turning a healthy profit. The biggest dream, however, started to take shape with the announcement of the annual Seaside Harvest Festival. It was a huge event, drawing tourists and locals alike, with a coveted spot for the best local food vendor. We should do it, Finn declared one morning, holding up the festival flyer, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Imagine, Ilara, a booth right on the promenade showcasing our best. It would put us on the map. Ilara, usually cautious, felt a thrill of excitement herself. It would be a lot of work, Finn. We'd need to scale up, prepare dozens of everything. But we could do it, he insisted, his enthusiasm infectious. Together, we'd plan it down to the last crumb. We could offer mini versions of our most popular pastries, maybe a special festival coffee blend. And your lemon poppy seed loaf, of course. His belief in her, in Oithamang, was a powerful current. All right, she said, a smile blooming on her face. Let's do it. Let's show them what the salty spoon can really do. The weeks leading up to the festival were a whirlwind of activity. Their usual rhythm was replaced by a more intense, focused energy. Late nights were spent brainstorming, early mornings perfecting recipes. They experimented with new offerings, taste-tested countless samples, and designed their festival stall with meticulous care. There were moments of stress, of course, a batch of dough that wouldn't rise, a last-minute ingredient shortage, an unexpected repair needed for the espresso machine. But through it all, their partnership held strong, even deepened. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, offering a comforting word, a shared laugh, or a silently handed cup of coffee at just the right moment. One particularly grueling evening, with flour dusting their clothes and exhaustion etched on their faces, Ilara found herself staring at a mountain of miniature tarts that needed filling. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Finn, who had just finished roasting a fresh batch of beans, noticed her slump. He walked over, gently took the piping bag from her hand, and began to fill the tarts with practiced ease. Take a break, Ilara. You've been on your feet all day. I can handle these. She looked at him, truly looked at him, illuminated by the warm glow of the cafe lights. His brow was furrowed in concentration, but his movements were gentle, his presence reassuring. A wave of profound affection washed over her, so potent it stole her breath. This wasn't just a business partner. This was someone who saw her, truly saw her, and cared enough to shoulder her burden. Thank you, Finn, she whispered, her voice a little thick. She sat down on a stool, watching him work, a feeling of warmth spreading through her chest. It was more than just gratitude. It was the quiet, blossoming certainty that this man was becoming irrevocably important to her. The festival day dawned bright and clear, a perfect coastal morning. Their stall, adorned with fresh flowers and the inviting aroma of coffee and baking, was an immediate hit. People flocked to the salty spoon booth, drawn by the delicious smells and Finn's charismatic chatter. Ilara, usually more reserved, found herself laughing easily, explaining her recipes, and basking in the genuine joy of their success. They worked in perfect sync, a well-oiled machine fueled by caffeine and shared dreams. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, casting a golden light over the bustling promenade, they stood side by side, leaning against the counter, watching the contented faces of their customers. "We did it, Alara," Finn said, his voice husky with pride and exhaustion. "We really did it." She turned to him, her heart full. "We did, Finn. It was amazing." Her gaze met his, and in that shared look, something shifted irrevocably. The air crackled with an unspoken energy, a recognition of the journey they had taken together. His hand reached out, gently cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed softly over her skin, sending a jolt of electricity through her. "You're incredible, Alara," he murmured, his eyes searching hers, full of an emotion that mirrored her own. Her breath hitched. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the warmth, the tenderness. When she opened them, his face was closer, his gaze intense. "I think," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant sounds of the festival, "I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air, a delicate, precious thing. Alara's heart thrummed like the wings of a hummingbird. All her old fears, her past hurts, flickered for a brief moment, a ghost of a shadow. But then, she looked into Finn's kind, open face, and the shadow dissolved. His love felt like sunshine, like the steady rhythm of the waves, like coming home. "I think," she replied, her voice shaky but firm, "I'm falling in love with you too, Finn." He smiled then, a slow, breathtaking smile that reached his eyes and crinkled the corners. And then he leaned in, and his lips met hers. It was a kiss born of shared effort, quiet understanding, and a love that had been patiently brewing, much like their finest coffee. It was soft, hesitant at first, then deepened into a tender promise, a confirmation of everything they had felt but not yet dared to voice. The world around them faded, leaving only the warmth of his touch, the taste of him, and the sweet, triumphant song of the sea. Their first kiss was not an ending, but a new beginning. The festival was a resounding success, but it was the quiet walk home afterward, hand in hand, that truly cemented their new reality. They talked for hours that night, sitting on the sand, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. Alara spoke of her past, of a relationship that had left her feeling adrift and uncertain, of the wall she had built around her heart. Finn listened, his hand holding hers, offering comfort and understanding without judgment. He shared his own vulnerabilities, his hopes, and his unwavering belief in the good that life could offer. The cafe, the Salty Spoon, continued to thrive, now infused with the quiet joy of their blossoming romance. Their partnership, once purely professional, now had an added layer of tenderness and affection. They learned to navigate the gentle complexities of being lovers and business partners, finding that their strengths complemented each other even more profoundly. Finn would leave a fresh, perfectly brewed coffee on the counter for Alara each morning. She would surprise him with a new, experimental pastry to taste. Their shared laughter echoed through the cafe, a warm, inviting sound that regulars noticed and cherished. As winter approached, bringing with it shorter days and wilder seas, their love became a source of deep comfort. They spent evenings curled up by the cafe's small fireplace reading, talking, simply existing in each other's peaceful company. Alara discovered Finn's love for old jazz records, and he in turn introduced her to the intricate art of sailing knots. Each shared discovery, each quiet moment, wove them more tightly together. One blustery December afternoon, as the rain lashed against the windows of the cafe, Finn found Alara staring out at the turbulent sea, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Alara leaned back into his embrace, feeling the solid warmth of him. "I was just thinking," she began, "about how different things are now. This time last year, I was still trying to find my footing, still wondering if I'd ever truly feel at home again." She turned in his arms, her hands coming to rest on his chest. "And now I can't imagine a life without this, without you." His eyes softened, mirroring the depth of her sentiment. "Me neither, Alara. You brought a light into my life I didn't even realize was missing. You taught me to dream bigger than just a successful cafe. You taught me to dream of a future." He reached into his pocket, and Alara's breath caught. He pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box, smooth and polished from wear. It was made of driftwood, she realized, bleached silver by the sun and sea. He opened it, revealing not a ring, but a delicate silver locket shaped like a tiny seashell, with a small, perfectly round pearl nestled within. "This," Finn said, his voice gentle but firm, "belonged to my grandmother. She always said it was a symbol of finding beauty and strength, even in the depths of the ocean. And when I look at you, Alara, I see all of that. You've navigated storms and you've emerged stronger, more beautiful than ever." He took her hand, his thumb tracing the lines on her palm. "Alara, my love, I don't want to just dream of a future anymore. I want to build it with you, every single day, through every season by this beautiful, ever-changing sea. Will you marry me?" Alara's eyes welled with tears, tears of pure, unadulterated joy. The melody the sea had been humming all along, the one she had slowly learned to sing, now swelled into a magnificent crescendo within her heart. It wasn't just a song of beginnings, it was a symphony of forever. "Yes," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Oh, Finn, yes. 1,000 times yes." He slipped a locket around her neck, its cool metal a comforting weight against her skin. Then he kissed her, a kiss that tasted of salt and coffee, and the sweet promise of a lifetime. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair held on the beach just outside the Salty Spoon as spring arrived, painting the world in fresh greens and vibrant blues. The cafe itself served as the reception hall, filled with the laughter of friends, the aroma of Alara's exquisite pastries, and Finn's perfectly brewed coffee. The melody of the sea provided the soundtrack, a gentle, unwavering tune that had woven itself into the very fabric of their love story. Years turned into a beautiful tapestry of shared moments. The Salty Spoon became more than just a cafe. It was a landmark, a place where generations came to share stories, celebrate milestones, and find comfort in the familiar warmth of its atmosphere. Alara and Finn worked side by side, their love deepening with each passing year, each challenge overcome, each joy shared. They eventually bought the building, expanded the kitchen, and even added a small, sun-drenched patio overlooking the sea. On quiet evenings, long after the last customer had left, and the aroma of roasted coffee still lingered, they would sit on their old bench outside, just as they had done so many times before. Alara, her silver locket glinting softly at her throat, would lean her head on Finn's shoulder, listening to the rhythmic lullaby of the waves. "Remember," she'd often say, her voice soft with contentment, "when we first talked about dreaming bigger?" Finn would smile, pressing a kiss to her hair. "We certainly did, my love. And look at us now. Our biggest dream was always right here, wasn't it? Found in the gentle hum of the sea, and in the quiet strength of our hearts." And as the moon cast its silvery path across the water, Alara would close her eyes, feeling the warmth of Finn's arm around her, the steady beat of his heart against her own. The melody of love, a gentle, unwavering tune, played on, a lullaby of forever, promising endless sunrises, and the comforting embrace of a love as vast and enduring as the sea itself. And for the first time in a long time, Alara wasn't just listening, she was singing along, her heart full, her soul at peace, dreaming the sweetest dreams, nestled safely in the arms of her love.